All right, so question of the day is going to be, should you get a SIG P320 in 2025? So currently at the time of filming this, it's the end of March 2025, and the whole, you know, SIG P320 fiasco is kind of kicked off again recently. Um, if you haven't, been on the internet and done research on it, basically there's a lot of videos and a lot of people on the internet talking about how the SIG P320 is both not drop safe, and there's even been cases with police officers where they go to reholster the gun, or the gun is already in the holster and the gun goes off, and they're claiming that they had no input on the gun, they weren't even touching the gun, so on and so forth. So the short answer from me, this whole video is just my opinions and my observations from what I've seen on the internet. But the short answer is I would probably wait. I think there's a lot of good evidence to suggest that there is something going on. Now, what that something is, I don't know. But I'll also say I don't think the 320 is a bad gun. I personally own 3 SIG guns in total, one being a full-size 320, which is the gun that I went through the police academy with and, shot and carried for the first part of my career. I've since switched to a Glock. And then I own a 320 carry, which I have as a plainclothes gun. So when I work in a plainclothes capacity, I like to carry that one. I haven't recently, just because I've been using it to test optics from Zero Tech and stuff. But and then I have the 365, which I don't think the 365 has been lumped in with the 320s. I think the SIG 365s are honestly my favorite carry gun between the 365 and then the 365 XL, and then the various options you have within that. So like the Spectre Comp, the X5, all that stuff. I think that's the best carry gun out there right now for a price to comfortability ratio and shootability. So, I'm not against SIG. I own them. I've used them. But I wouldn't suggest getting one until this whole thing kind of figures itself out. And hopefully it does. I don't wish anything bad about SIG. I don't think they should go bankrupt or anything like that. Like I said, I think they make great guns. So what influences that position? Basically, there's a lot of videos out there and a lot of forum posts. There's been a lot of independent testing, and it has been confirmed that early versions of the SIG 320 were not drop safe. It was very easy to drop it on the ground and it would go off without a trigger pull. SIG basically had interestingly enough, they had a voluntary upgrade program, which you could send your gun back and they would change a couple things in there and it would no longer have that issue. But since then, there's still been videos emerging out there of police officers typically shooting themselves in the leg or their gun discharging while in the holster or while they're reholstering, etc. And even myself, being a skeptic, I see those videos and I immediately think, okay, well, they had to have been, they had to have had their finger in the trigger guard, or there had to have been something. There's no way, right? And that's a reasonable stance to take. But then you think about the types of guns that police officers carry, and, the typical ones that are in, widespread use across the country are going to be the SIG 320 and the Glock 17. And then there's also some other variants of the Glock, like some departments are going to the 45 now and stuff. But you'll see some Smith & Wessons out there, but I'd say probably, I'd say it's a majority probably Glock, and then second would be SIG, probably like 50% Glock, 40% SIG, and then 10% other types of guns. And that's not scientific. That's just me pulling some numbers out of my ass. But that's typically what you see. And so, you know, if this was a police officer issue, a training issue, if this was officers doing negligent things, well, then it's only reasonable to assume that you would see this happening with other guns at the same frequency that you see it happening with SIDS. And to my knowledge, you don't see that. There have been like cases of officers shooting themselves with their own guns on accident with other types of guns, but those are very isolated incidents that are not happening at the same frequency that you're seeing this stuff reported on about SID. So that's kind of my stance on it. I like I said, I really like the 320 platform. I actually, in terms of ergonomics and shootability, I prefer it over my Glock. It just fits my hand better. You have a little bit more modularity with the grip modules, better grip angle, that sort of stuff. Like I like the 320s, but just seeing that there's this kind of like shady cover up potentially going on, and like us on the outside, just like looking at what SIG has put out about it and what, you know, the internet is saying about it, like we can only make assumptions. We can't have any concrete details. So, you know, I would just say wait. If you're thinking on getting a 320, I think if, you know, this whole thing pans out and they either fix the issue or maybe they come out with a completely new version of the gun that redesigns the whole thing and whatever, then yeah, I'd say get it. Like I said, it's a great gun. They feel good in the hand. They shoot good. But I don't think it's worth the potential of something happening when you go to reholster, especially if it's going to be a carry gun, like a 320 carry, and you're carrying it in the appendix position. I just don't think that's worth it. Even if you do everything right and maybe you slam it in there a little hard and somehow the gun goes off, like that's a really bad day. And there's a lot of important stuff down there that you don't want to shoot unintentionally. So that's my stance. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Is my stance on it reasonable? Do you think I'm full of shit? I don't know. Let me know down there. And we can further the conversation in the comments. So anyways, a little bit of a rambly video. Sorry if the camera was a little bit shaky. I just kind of have it sitting on a mini tripod on the top of my dash. So sorry if the footage was crazy, but yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good day.